Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in to the Legal Hands to the Face show with Bill Colarulo as we get ready for the playoffs with this Philadelphia Eagles football team. And if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that this would be the feeling in this city as we got ready for the NFL playoffs, I would have thought you were crazy. I cannot remember a time as a Philadelphia Eagles fan where I felt like this getting ready for the playoffs. We wait all offseason for the NFL season to begin, all because we want that shot of the Philadelphia Eagles going on a playoff run. And we're going to the playoffs. But, man, do things not feel good right now. And we're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about that Giants embarrassment that we saw yesterday. We're going to talk about Nick Sirianni. We're going to get into the matchups against the Tampa Bay Bucks if you have any hope that this team's going to do anything. And we're going to be joined by guest Johnny Marks tonight. Some of you guys got used to hearing Johnny Marks' voice after Eagles games. Haven't heard him in a while. So he'll be joining the Legal Hands to the Face show tonight to talk some Philadelphia Eagles. So go ahead, guys, smash that like button for me. We are live right now on my YouTube channel, Bill Colarulo and Legal Hands to the Face Sports Talk. We are live on the JAKIB Sports Network. And we are also streaming live on Facebook and Instagram. So go ahead, hit that like button, hit that share button for me. Help us reach more Eagles fans, if there's any still out there. And we'll take the audio. We'll upload this to all the podcast platforms. So if you're listening to the podcast, you're listening to the audio, leave us a review if you can. Really goes a long way in helping us reach more Eagles fans. I would really appreciate it. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, give us a review. But let's jump right in, guys. Johnny Marks will be joining the show shortly. But I see a lot of my Legal Hands to the Face crew checking in. Jason A-Team, Gary Sells, Adam Exploits, P.I., Thunderbird. Who we got on Instagram today? Started doing this show on Instagram Live last week. StreamYard finally allows it now. That was the only reason we never went live on Instagram before. So if you're here on Instagram, give me a what's up. I see Danny Beam. Good to see you. Good to see my Instagram crew checking in. But the Philadelphia Eagles get absolutely embarrassed by the New York Giants on Sunday afternoon. There was a debate all week. Should the Philadelphia Eagles play their starters? Should they rest their starters for the playoffs? If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you know that my position was I thought that the Philadelphia Eagles should play their starters. I didn't think that this team had played well over the last few weeks, which is an understatement. And I wanted to see them try to get their mojo right by playing their starters against a bad New York Giants team. I wanted to see that offense get going. I wanted to see the offense play mistake-free football. I wanted the defense to show us that they can stop the run again after being so good against the run the first 9 games of the season. They had let 6 straight opponents rush for over 100 yards. So I wanted the starters to play against the Giants. because I wanted to get that mojo right headed into the playoffs. And there was still that outside chance that the Washington Commanders would have upset the Dallas Cowboys, and the Eagles could have backdoored their way in to an NFC East championship. So all the starters played in that game with the exception of Devontae Smith, DeAndre Swift, and Fletcher Cox. Nick Sirianni apparently gave a speech on Saturday night that they were going to try to win this football game. And they came out. And not only did they not get the mojo right for the playoffs, they got absolutely dominated and embarrassed by a bad New York Giants team. And Nick Sirianni was forced to wave the white flag and pull all of his starters in the first half. Not because the Cowboys were up big on the Commanders. The Cowboys were actually losing to the Commanders at that point. Not because the Eagles were up by 3 touchdowns and they could afford to sit down after getting their mojo right for the playoffs. No. They had to wave the white flag because things were only going to get worse in that game. The New York Giants, who have one of the worst offenses in the NFL, put up 24 points in the first half. The score was 24-0. A Giants team that had absolutely nothing to play for not only wins the game, but beats up on the starters so bad in the first half that the Philadelphia Eagles had to put their starters on the bench. It was embarrassing. And that was on the heels of just getting embarrassed at Lincoln Financial Field by Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals. And there were a lot of things to be frustrated about in that Eagles-Giants game. There were a ton. But let's start with the offense for a second. Because you were going up against Wink Martindale, who lost his job today, by the way. The defensive coordinator for the New York Giants was fired today. But you were going up against Wink Martindale, whose Giants defense blitzes more than any team in the NFL, with the exception of the Minnesota Vikings. They blitz 45% of the time. And in Week 16, when the Giants and the Eagles played at Lincoln Financial Field, Wink Martindale blitzed Jalen Hurts 75% of his dropbacks. So, do you think that the Giants were going to blitz Jalen Hurts on Sunday? Did we think that just maybe we should have a plan for the blitz going into that football game? And Wink Martindale comes out, and they blitz Jalen Hurts again 75% of the time, and Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson had zero answers for it. Zero. The blitz protection was an absolute joke. The play calling to try to beat the blitz was an absolute joke. You knew it was coming. You knew what Wink Martindale was going to do to you. And you didn't have a single answer for it. And Nick Sirianni at his press conference today, the first questions he's asked, what happened to the blitz protection? He said, oh, well, there's a lot of things you could do against the blitz, and what we chose to do didn't work, and that starts with me. Do you think so, Nick? How you didn't have a plan for Wink Martindale's defense is mind-blowing to me. And guess what, guys? The New York Giants blitz more than any team in the league, with the exception of the Minnesota Vikings. Do you know who's number 3? The Tampa Bay Bucks. The Tampa Bay Bucks blitz 39% of the time. So you better be ready on Monday night next week, because Todd Bowles is going to bring the pressure. He blitzed Jalen Hurts 75% of the time in week 3. What do you think he's going to do? And we'll get into that matchup later on in the show. The Eagles may be able to win that football game because the Bucs aren't good either, but we'll talk about it later on in the show. But that was the first thing that was frustrating with the offense, having zero answers for a blitz you knew was coming. And how about rolling out Rashad Penny over and over again to try to pass block? The guy can't pass block. So what the Eagles decide to do is we're going to run Kenny Gainwell, who's our third down back, who's actually good at pass protection. And we're going to keep Rashad Penny in on passing downs and try to get him to pass block. Ridiculous. And then let's jump over to the other side of the football, because as frustrating as the offense was, the defense was just as frustrating. The first 2 plays of the game, Matt Patricia and the Eagles defense decides it'd be a great idea to drop our best pass rusher, Hassan Reddick, in coverage. First 2 plays of the game. And this is coming on the heels of the Arizona Cardinals game where Hassan Reddick was in pass coverage more than he's ever been in his career. What the hell is this team doing? And I'm talking about game planning right now. Talking about offensive game planning, defensive schemes. But the worst part of all of this, throw the game plan and the scheme out the window. What we saw on Sunday was a team that has given up on its coaching staff. I have never seen a football team ever that was going to the playoffs and had already checked out. And that's what you saw against the New York Giants. This team is checked out. And that's why us as fans are checking out. That's why there are very few fans who still have any hope that this team's going to do anything in the playoffs. An absolute joke what we saw from this team yesterday. And last week, after the Philadelphia Eagles were embarrassed by Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals, there were a lot of people who were calling for Nick Sirianni's job. And I was one of the guys saying that I thought it would be a complete overreaction to move on from Nick Sirianni. If you follow me, you know that was what I was saying all week. I couldn't believe there were people calling for Nick Sirianni's job after the Arizona Cardinals game. I thought a coach who had brought his team to the playoffs 3 straight seasons, first Eagles coach ever to do that in his first 3 years, coming off a Super Bowl loss, dealing with the Super Bowl hangover that we were all worried about. I thought it was crazy for people to say Nick Sirianni's job is in jeopardy. And I kept comparing the Super Bowl hangover, saying, look, only 6 coaches ever have overcome that and gotten back the next year. And you were talking about legends. Tom Landry, Shula, Dan Reeves, Bud Grant, Marv Levy, Bill Belichick. So I was giving Nick Sirianni the benefit of the doubt. But after what I just saw on Sunday against the New York Giants, I no longer believe that it would be an overreaction to say that Nick Sirianni's job is in jeopardy. Because I have never seen a football team that is going to the playoffs check out on a coaching staff like what we just witnessed. And if they do that again on Monday night in the wild card game against the Tampa Bay Bucks, I don't want Nick Sirianni here. And that's coming from one of his biggest supporters and biggest fans. I have always talked highly of Nick Sirianni. I'm getting all worked up again. But I want to get my man Johnny Marks joining the show. He'll be here in a couple of minutes. And I want to talk to him about what is going on with this Eagles team and what his thoughts are on Nick Sirianni and this coaching staff and whether or not they should come back next year. An absolute embarrassment. So let's get Johnny Marks on the show. I want to talk to John. There he is. What's going on, my brother?
I don't want to talk about the Eagles. I'm finished. It's over. It's crazy. I just heard you, Bill. It went from 0 to 60 in no time, where it's like, man, Nick Sirianni, I know they've been struggling, but they started 10-1 and there's injuries. And like, I'm not saying that he's not responsible for some of this, but you're not fired him. He went to the Super Bowl last year. And after watching the Giants game, it feels totally different. I've never seen a team not give a shit like that before. An Eagles team.
Especially a team that is going to the playoffs. I've seen teams check out. Look, we saw it with Chip Kelly. There was a reason they made the move when they did. He didn't even make it to the end of the season because that team had checked out, and rightfully so. Chip Kelly was a horrible human being, a horrible coach to play for. But you talk about this team, and one of the things that surprises me, John, and welcome to the show too, John. We're getting right into it, talking about the Eagles, man. It's good to see you. I know a lot of people are happy to hear your voice again.
They are? Well, hi. Thank you. Yeah, good.
So we had John on the show. We had John on the show in the summertime, long time ago. Kind of want to go back and see what the hell we were talking about. I know one of the things we talked about was linebacker, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But what surprises me the most, John, when you talk about it going 0 to 60 with Nick Sirianni, is one of the things that I thought that Sirianni was so good at was building a strong culture. And we thought that this team had an unbelievable ability to overcome adversity. But now that I look back, John, what adversity has this team faced up until this season?
They haven't. No, it's a great point. They really haven't. I guess when they were 2-5 and he gave the flower speech about how, are you watering and are you fertilizing it? And they went on that run. And I mean, that was the only real adversity that they had faced. I guess I'm just surprised, and I guess I shouldn't be. I've been watching sports long enough. But the culture of this team was already established, right? Like, we talked about with Brandon and Fletcher and Jason Kelsey and all the guys that have won Super Bowls here. And you can see, not that those guys aren't great Eagles and not that those guys aren't great leaders, but it doesn't mean a damn right now. And I mean, bottom line is with Nick Sirianni, he's the head coach, and this team has no answers for anything that's going on right now. I mean, they were behind 24-0 to the Giants in the first half before they pulled their starters in a game where, was it likely that the Cowboys were going to lose to Washington? Well, they were down early on in the game. The Cowboys were. So the Arizona game where you're playing for everything, you're playing for a number 2 seed, you're playing for the division, you're at home, and you give up 35 points to one of the worst offensive teams in the league. And your defense, I mean, the Eagles had the ball, I think, 3 times in the second half, and they scored 1 touchdown because the defense gave up 4 drives of 70-plus yards. But you know what it is, Bill? Like, I don't know exactly where to put my finger. Is it the coaches and the players aren't getting along? Is there a problem in the locker room? Is there a problem with Jalen and A.J. Brown? I thought A.J. Brown's comments about how the players need to believe in the coaches were very telling to me. I don't think these players believe in the coaches. And I don't know if there's problems in the locker room between the players, because teams that fall apart like this, that were 10-1 and were winning and beating good teams, they don't just forget how to win and lose talent. Something internally is going on with this team, I'm convinced, and it's major, and that's the biggest thing going on right now.
Yeah, I look at that defense, and we could talk about that. I think they lack personnel. But when you look at this offense, there is no reason, outside of them not believing in their coaches, outside of bad game plans by Sirianni and Brian Johnson and bad play calling, that this offense shouldn't be dominating for 4 quarters. You look at this offense on paper, I would put them up against any offense in the NFL. And this is the product they're putting out on the field. The New York Giants stink. And this is what they do in a game that actually matters. The Cowboys were losing at that point in the game, John.
Yep. Yeah, the offense, like you said with the defense, I believe, is personnel. And I'm not telling you that it's well coached, but they've tried 2 coordinators, and to me, it's mostly personnel driven on the defense. The offense is puzzling because didn't we talk about how they have a great offensive line and they have multiple running backs and they have great wide receivers and Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts? So what exactly is going on? I mean, the offense is simple. It feels like you know what's coming. When they're stalling and it feels like they need a big down or a big drive, they're relying on Jalen in designed runs, right? Like you can't do that. That's not what the NFL is. You can do it a little bit. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not a dynamic runner. We know what he does with the tush push and by the goal line, but like he needs to be able to throw the ball. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I can't put my finger on what's going on with the offense. Like you had said, Bill, the defense stinks. The defense just flat out stinks. They don't have a linebacker. They're not getting into the quarterback. Their young players are underachieving. Their old guys look old. Their secondary stinks. But the offense doesn't make sense. And I don't know why they're struggling. It wasn't that long ago. Remember the Bills game? This is the same Bills team that have won five straight games since the Eagles. Jalen's going back and forth with Josh Allen, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They tie the game on that 59-yard field goal. They win in overtime. Where's that offense? We haven't seen it in a month and a half, and it's puzzling. I don't know what it is.
And the turnovers, man. The turnovers have been a problem all season long. You know, the offense finishes the year now with 28 turnovers, which is tied for 23rd in the NFL. Last season, they only had 19. Last year, they were a +8 turnover differential. This year, they finished the season a -10. It's amazing that this team won 11 games. It really is. When you look at how bad this defense has been, they're worse in the league in almost every single category. The only one they're not in the bottom of the league is rushing defense. But if you look at the last 7 games, they stink against the run too. But you mentioned something a little while ago. You said that, talking about adversity and Nick Sirianni battling adversity, and you cited to his first season where they started out 2-5. He gives the flower speech. They end up going on a run and making the playoffs. But the major difference that year, John, there were 0 expectations. You had a coach that nobody knew. You had a quarterback who was starting his first time ever as a starter. He had played a couple games his rookie season. There were 0 expectations. Last year, they didn't have crazy expectations, and they had a pretty easy road. They dominated everybody all the way up until the Super Bowl. And this year, the first time they face adversity is when they got punched in the mouth against the San Francisco 49ers, and they've never been able to recover. And I've had some people say, did the 49ers break this team? Do you see that? Do you think the 49ers broke this team?
Remember after the game, some members of the 49ers defense, Bosa was saying, here's the template for beating the Eagles offense. Here's the template for beating Jalen Hurts. He looks at the rush on every play. He's worried about the rush. And if you bring pressure up the middle and you don't let him escape to the middle, he has nowhere to go. And he says, I hope the Cowboys use this. Is that what's happened? Jalen Hurts wouldn't be the first player, and the Eagles wouldn't be the first team where defensive coordinators, somebody figured him out. And I'm wondering if Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni have any answer for it. So it sure as hell doesn't look like they do. Outside of Jalen Hurts making hero plays and then doing the tush push. Remember when the tush push was fun and it was cute? And it was like, oh, the Eagles and the tush push, whatever. They were lining up to do it on Sunday, and I was mad. I'm like, damn it, like this can't be the offense. The tush push can't be that's not the West Coast offense, the tush push. It's a move to get a yard. But like I don't know what happened. I mean, Lamar Jackson, after his MVP season, if you look at his numbers, they went down each year, and he had a problem staying healthy. And he came back this year. He looked like he's going to win the MVP. But there was an adjustment made to Lamar Jackson and to what the Ravens offense did, right? To where they said, hey, Lamar, we're not going to let you run around and make 1,000 different plays. You're going to have to throw the football, and we're going to hit you. And it feels like they've done the same thing with Jalen Hurts. Last year, and I think it's fair to have felt like this when you watch the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts was throwing the ball better than Pat Mahomes. I mean, the progress Jalen Hurts made last year throwing the football was amazing. Because I was one of the guys that was like, I don't know if he can throw the ball well enough to be a difference-making quarterback. Because ultimately, when you get a little bit older and you're not making the same splash plays with your legs, you're going to need to be able to throw the football. I don't need you to get hurt. You don't need to be running the ball 10 or 15 times a game. And he showed last year that he progressed. He look what he did in the Super Bowl. And you look at it this year, and he's went backwards. I don't know how much of that's coaching. I don't know how much of that is confidence. I don't see confidence in Jalen Hurts. I don't see him throwing with anticipation, getting the ball out early. I see Jalen Hurts looking for open receivers, and I see Jalen Hurts kind of thinking through everything instead of just reacting and it being natural. So, I mean, I don't know what you do. If you lose to the Bucs, what do you do? Come back next year with the same coaching staff, with the same head coach, and the same offensive coordinator? I just don't know how you do it. I don't know how you fix it.
And I'm not absolving Jalen Hurts. I think he does need to play better. But what I see is a quarterback that doesn't trust the offensive game plan and is not trusting his offensive coaching staff. And you talk about the blitz. Jalen does need to be better against the blitz, but they're not helping him. With these route designs and this pass protection, they are not helping Jalen Hurts. And you mentioned the San Francisco 49ers team saying that they kind of had the blueprint how to stop this offense. Well, you look at the last 6 games, they're only averaging 20 points a game. That's a big drop-off to only be averaging 20 points a game. And on defense, they're giving up 30 points a game in the last 6. So it's not a surprise they're 1 and 5 in their last 6 games. And I'm concerned because you look at that Tampa Bay Bucs team, as bad as they are, John, because they're not a good team. They barely beat the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah,
I just looked at the last 6 games, though. Philadelphia Eagles are 1 and 5 with a negative 59-point differential and a negative 8 turnover differential. In the last 6, the Bucs 5 and 1, plus 38-point differential, plus 5 turnover differential. Which team do you think is the better team? Just looking over the last 6 games.
No, I don't know why anybody at this point would give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt that, like against the Cardinals, they're going to be fine. Remember, this started with the Seahawks, and everybody said, they're going to beat the Seahawks. The Seahawks, and I'm like, hey, they haven't won up there in a really long time. It's a tough place to play, and the Eagles managed to find a way to lose that game. Earlier in the season, they were finding a way to win games. They found a way to lose that game, and then they beat the Giants, which was a game that was probably a lot closer than it should have been. But that Arizona game, and then you look at the Giants game, you have no reason to believe that this team is going to beat the Bucs. Period. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield had a good year. I'm not pretending Baker Mayfield is the next coming of a top 5 elite quarterback, but if this defense plays the way this defense has been playing, if this secondary plays the way this secondary has been playing, if these linebackers can't cover anybody over the middle, it was happening during the Giants game. They're doing simple crossing routes, and there's nobody 10, 15 yards from them. From a Giants receiver, it's like, what are they doing? Why are they so soft? Are they missing coverages? So I'm done giving the Eagles the benefit of the doubt. I'm done saying, well, no, the Eagles will beat the Bucs. No, I'm done with that. They've given you no reason over the course of the last 6 weeks to believe that they can beat the Buccaneers. If they do, they do. And I'll say, good win. But, man, like, I don't see them beating – beat the Cardinals. They couldn't beat the Giants. They were embarrassed against the Giants. The Buccaneers are at least will show up and give you effort, and they're going to be feisty. This team's not good enough to show up and win on Monday night. I mean, the NFL buried the game on Monday night, 8:15. It's probably the worst window that you could have for one of these games. It's because the Eagles stink and the Buccaneers stink. So there you go. You got the stinker of the weekend. Our Philadelphia Eagles are playing in the stinker of the weekend. Awesome.
I'm surprised they didn't put it on the game that's being streamed only on Peacock. That's what I thought they were. That's what I thought they were going to do. Well, let's talk about this defense, John, because we've talked about it. They're bad. Their personnel is bad. But 4 games ago, the Philadelphia Eagles make the decision to change their defensive coordinator. We find out about it on like a Saturday morning from Jay Glazer, which is still blows my mind that there was no announcement made. We had to find out from Jay Glazer about it. But there was an interesting interview last week. Everybody got kind of caught up in the A.J. Brown locker interview. But the next day, Hassan Reddick spoke with the media. And there was a subtle thing he said when he spoke to the media when he was asked about the change from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia. And they asked him about how difficult it was in changing D coordinators this late. And he said, well, the higher-ups thought that this would be a good idea, and us as players need to do a good. But by saying the higher ups, he didn't say Coach Sirianni. So whose decision was it to really make a desperate move and change defensive coordinators when it's not the coaching, it's the personnel.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I always thought it was Howie Roseman. I didn't think Nick Sirianni went to Howie Roseman and said, "Hey, we got to make a change." This is something they were probably thinking about doing. And once you had that last, I don't even remember the last game that Desai was the coordinator in. But yeah, I don't believe for a second. I mean, if you remember when Brandon Graham initially after the game, Brandon Graham talked about, well, like the media and the fans and everybody was talking about Sean Desai making a change, so they more or less had to make a change. And I remember thinking, were we really talking about Sean Desai making a change? Because I know doing five days of talk on sports radio, I'm not telling you that there wasn't talk about Sean Desai. There was more focus on the offense and Brian Johnson than there was on Sean Desai. We know the defense stinks. I thought it was personnel based the whole time. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, beginning of the season. In fact, there was a Twitter poll on the Marks and Reese show. I think 85% of the people were saying, yeah, Sean Desai's an upgrade over Jonathan Gannon. And my whole thing was, you don't even know who he was, Sean Desai. Like you don't know Sean Desai from Joseph Adai, the old Colts running back. But just everybody assumed he's going to be better than Jonathan Gannon because Jonathan Gannon, he's the reason they lost the Super Bowl. Well, I'm not telling you Jonathan Gannon would have saved the season and this would be a top 5 defense right now. I think there'd be a better defense than they are right now. But there's unfortunately with this defense, and people are talking about they should have brought TJ Edwards back now, and CJ had an interception in his first game back with the Lions. Yeah, that's all nice to think right now they were going to do it. The bottom line was they used high draft picks on Georgia Bulldog players that are supposed to be making more contributions than they are right now. Nolan Smith's been at 0 this year. Jordan Davis, I saw Brian Baldinger was saying he's out of shape and he shouldn't even be playing right now. And it feels like Jalen Carter maybe hit a little bit of a rookie wall here. And then the old guys look old. Outside of Hassan Reddick, who's the next best defensive player on this team? Well, Josh Sweat has it at a sack, and it feels like 2 months. It might be 2 months. Brandon's probably in his last year, right? You're asking guys to do what they did last year, which they're not able to do it. Hassan Reddick's their best defensive player. Who's their second best player? This is a bad defense.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Who is the second best player? And for those who follow the show, I've been talking about for weeks that I think the defense is in the state it's in because Howie Roseman has swung and missed way too much in the draft on defensive players. It wasn't just the Georgia Bulldog players. If you look back, not including this year, not including the rookie class, because you can't expect rookies to carry your team to a Super Bowl. You look at the last 4 years before this draft, there's not a single player outside of the D tackle position that is giving you anything, John. They drafted Nakobe Dean, Kyron Johnson. Nakobe Dean's on IR. Kyron Johnson's on the Steelers. They took Zach McPherson, IR. Defensive end, Teron Jackson on the practice squad. Linebacker, Jacoby Stevens, not even in the league. Patrick Johnson finally is getting some defensive snaps. He's more of a special teams guy. The year before that, Davion Taylor out of the league. Kevon Wallace on the Titans. Sean Bradley on IR. Casey Toohill on the Commanders. You go back to 2019, Sharif Miller out of the league. They have not drafted a defensive player that is contributing to this defense in years. And this is the problem now is Howie Roseman tries to get aftermarket parts and make things work. And it just isn't going to work on a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Now, you talked about, real quick, switching to Matt Patricia, though. So they did that after the San Francisco game. And when you said you did that poll about, Sean Desai and people were saying he was better than Jonathan Gannon, as bad as things were, because they weren't great, he did have a good game against the Los Angeles Rams. He did have a good game against the Miami Dolphins. He did have a good second half against the Dallas Cowboys. They completely shut down the Tampa Bay Bucks in week 3. Then you make the change to Patricia, and he hasn't gone up against an offense that's better than 19th in the NFL, and they haven't done a damn thing, John. So would you go back to Sean Desai at this point for the playoff run, or are you stuck with Patricia at this point?
Yeah, I think you're stuck with Patricia, but looking back at making the change, and I guess my reaction at the time was the Eagles obviously felt like that something needed to be done. And I mean, if they feel like that Sean Desai is a problem with coaching and scheming and everything else, then yeah, bringing in a guy like Matt Patricia who has experience as a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator makes sense. Reality is that might have been the tipping point of the season. This might have been when players were like, "What are we doing here? Like, what are we doing here? Was it because of Desai? Was it because they made the move from Desai? I don't know. I didn't hear a lot of players coming out and having Desai's back or saying the wrong move was made or anything like that. But it just kind of started in motion, just a bunch of weirdness. And when's the last time a defensive coordinator that late in the season on a team that I guess at the time had 2 losses or 3 losses? And like you said, defense wasn't a total train wreck this year. They had their moments. Injuries had affected them, but I mean, if you remember at the trade deadline, remember that there were stories out there that Howie was sniffing around about a corner, that the corner from the Bears that's set to be a free agent.
There was also some talks about Patrick Surtain from
right.
Denver as well. Yeah.
Right, agreed. So because the Eagles can't draft and develop a corner, guess what they have to do? They did the same thing with wide receiver. They have to go out and buy one. So he's looking, and I think this is what they do this offseason. He's looking to go out and buy a corner and then sign him to a contract. Who's the last corner they drafted? And Jalen Mills, and he was a 7th-round draft pick for a reason, off the field stuff, right? They got lucky. Back. Yeah, you have to go back to Lito or Sheldon Brown when you're talking about a corner, and that hurts. You can't constantly use duct tape on a roster, and the offense is almost a separate thing right here. But the fact that you swung and missed, like you had said, even on some of those guys, if they're contributing players on your roster, you got to hit on 1 or 2 of these guys to make an impact. You haven't hit on anybody.
Especially in a salary cap era where you're paying a quarterback $200 million, you're paying a wide receiver $100 million. You need young defensive players who are still playing on their rookie deal, the 4-year rookie contract. But this is why it infuriates me even more that they let TJ Edwards and Marcus Epps walk. They didn't draft those guys, but those were young players that they actually developed. And you're not good enough at finding young defensive talent that you should let players like that walk out the door, man. That's what I'm so frustrated about with Howie Roseman. Well, look, we started this whole conversation about Nick Sirianni and how surprised we are about the culture, and it looks like this team kind of has given up. And you mentioned a little bit, but knowing Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, if this team comes out against the Bucs and they lay an egg like what we just saw the last 2 weeks against the Giants and the Cardinals, is it your opinion that Nick Sirianni is back next season as the head coach?
I think it comes down to a conversation that Jeffrey Lurie has, and it's how do we fix this? He says it to Howie Roseman, and he says it to Nick Sirianni. How do we fix it? How do we fix the offense? Doug Peterson, if you remember, didn't really have an answer. He wanted to bring in a defensive coordinator, Matt Burke, I think, and wanted to bring back Grow or whatever it was. Like, his answer wasn't sufficient. And if Nick Sirianni doesn't have a good answer and you don't believe that him coming back is going to change things, like some owners would say, hey, he just had me in the Super Bowl. I have to give him at least another year. We were 10-1. There were some injuries. I have to give him another year. Jeffrey Lurie's not a knee-jerk reaction guy to where he just fires the fire. But if he believes next year it's not going to get better, and what he saw 5 of the last 6 games or what he saw the last half of this season is more what this team is, and especially the other thing is conversations that are going to be had during exit interviews with Howie Roseman, maybe even with Jeffrey Lurie, guys that may not be back next year, like Brandon Graham, like Fletcher Cox, like Jason Kelsey. I know if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I'm having private conversations with these guys and saying, hey, what's going on? And if Nick Sirianni is deemed to be a problem because of the screaming and yelling at the fans or the immaturity or whatever the hell's going on with what's going on in that locker room right now, I don't think he's back. I don't think he's back. I mean, if Nick Sirianni's not back next year, what exactly does he do that you can't replace, that you can't find out there? And that's the problem. Like, could the Eagles survive without Nick Sirianni? Yeah, because he's got no answers for anything right now. So, I mean, depending on how it goes down and depending what these veteran players have to say after this season is going to determine his future.
It's crazy. You talk about him taunting the fans, and when they were winning, everybody loved that stuff. Well, a majority of people love that stuff. But when you're losing, that's going to get people turning on you real quick, man, because coaches don't act like that in the NFL. Very, very rarely you ever see Andy Reid taunt the crowd. No way, man. You're not going to see that from coaches. And when Sirianni does it, it's great when you're winning football games, but the moment adversity comes into play, everyone's going to turn on you real fast.
No, and like of course Andy Reid doesn't do it, but who does, right? Like give me
anybody.
Rex Ryan. You have to go back to Rex Ryan for a guy that is kind of colorful like Nick Sirianni. I like Nick, I really do. I thought he was effective as a leader, and guys played hard for him during his first 2 years. And they did, right? Like we talked about adversity earlier, and I don't think they've really faced adversity until right now. But guys played hard for him. They played for him. They're not playing for him right now. They're not playing hard for him right now. That team has been going through the motions. I remember might have been after the Cowboys game, where I remember watching the press conferences after the game, and these guys look like they're like, man, are we not good enough? Are we like they got smashed 2 weeks in a row, and I feel like those 2 games they lost all confidence in their ability, and the coaches have not been able to get them back, and the coaches may have lost confidence too. But man, this is a mess. This is a historic collapse like nothing I've seen in my lifetime. You have to go back to the '64 Phillies. A lot of people are saying you're going back 60 years for a collapse like this. To go from 10-1 to where we are right now, talking about firing the coach now is it's unexpected and it's crazy. I can't believe we're here where we are right now.
Yeah, I think they're the second team ever with the 1986 Jets who won 10 out of their first 11 and didn't win the division. I mean, it really is a historic collapse.
First team not to get the 12 wins, and they had the benefit of the 17th win, the 17th game. They even had that extra game to try to get the 12 wins. And it's not like they I know they faced the gauntlet, but they won the first 3 games of the freaking gauntlet. And everybody signed up for, we're gonna win those last 4 games, and there's no problem. And you know what? Like, I don't know if the team believed that or what, but I don't think this team can beat anybody right now. So we'll see what happens on Monday. But this is as dire as I can remember this franchise.
And that's what's really depressing me, John. I said it on my other show this morning on the Philly Sports Power Hour, that as much as it hurt when Super Bowl 57 ended last year on the holding penalty against James Bradbury, you found some solace in, well, they're going to get back really soon. They got a great franchise quarterback. They got a good young head coach. They have a great nucleus on this football team. We're going to get back. And now you sit here today and you look forward not only to this Monday against the Bucs, but we look forward maybe to next season or the year after. When is this team going to be a Super Bowl contender again? Because you just mentioned about probably no Jason Kelce next year, no Brandon Graham, no Fletcher Cox. Who's the offensive coordinator? Who's the defensive coordinator? Who's your head coach? There's so many question marks now revolving around this team. You still don't have a linebacker. You still don't have safeties. Now you have a guy, Sidney Brown, who was promising, tears his ACL.
Man.
A lot of question marks, John, that's got me depressed because I don't know when this team is going to be a contender again.
Yeah, and I wonder A.J. Brown, his happiness, and is he going to demand a new contract this offseason because he was putting up big numbers, and obviously he was on pace for almost 2,000 yards at one point. That has changed. DeMonte Smith's going to need a new contract, right? Like all of a sudden it goes from best roster, man, we can draft, look at the draft picks, look at the free agent signings, like everything we touch turns to gold, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts. And like that, now you're questioning everything. So it is. Let's see what happens in the game on Monday night. But this is going to be an uncomfortable offseason. And man, like to think that Nick Sirianni's job could be on the line based on what happens on Monday, it's crazy to think right now, but I think it's reality.
And one player you didn't mention, you said the best player on the defense is Hassan Reddick. He's probably going to want a new deal because he's not going to want to play with only 1 year left on that 3-year deal he signed last year. So a lot of question marks. Well, Johnny, I appreciate you joining the show, my man. I see people in the chat wanting to know why you left WIP. John did a whole announcement about it. You could check it out on his Instagram page. But Google it. It's everywhere.
But I had a really good opportunity with DoorDash to to deliver everybody's lunch and dinner. So I couldn't pass it up. So I had to tell the Marks and Reese show that I could no longer do both things, DoorDash and WIP. But yeah, just Google it. It was a decision that I made going forward that I felt like was best for my quality of life. And I love Ike and Jack and WIP and everything else. But Google it, and you'll see video, and you'll see an interview on Crossing Broad where I kind of get into more of the details. But all good, and I hope to be back. I love coming on with you, Bill, but I hope to be back doing something as soon as I can.
Awesome, John. Well, I'm looking forward to it, man. I appreciate you making time for us tonight, my brother.
Anytime, man. Love coming on with you. Thank you.
Get back to your family. My man, Johnny Marks, joining the Legal Hands to the Face show. Always good talking to John. I know you guys are happy to hear Johnny's voice again, talking Eagles. I wish it was under better circumstances. I wish we had John on talking about all the positive things with this Philadelphia Eagles football team, but unfortunately, that is just not reality right now. But guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to turn our focus to this wild card game because it's amazing. There is, in fact, a playoff game in Tampa on Monday night. So we'll talk about that. We'll take a little look around the NFL, some other playoff matchups as well. And don't forget, like we end every Legal Hands to the Face show, with a little Philadelphia Eagles trivia. So hit that like button, guys. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their Fantasy Pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back in to the Legal Hands to the Face show with Bill Colarulo. Appreciate you guys spending some time with me tonight talking about this Philadelphia Eagles football team. I know it's a lot more fun for you guys when they're winning, but let me tell you, it is so much more fun for me when this team is winning football games, when there's things to be excited about. Because I bleed green too. I've told you guys that before. I want to see this team win a Super Bowl. I want to see this team do well. I hate having to come up here and critique this team. But things have just gotten really, really bad. And if you guys were here earlier, we just had Johnny Marks on the show, my man John, joining the Legal Hands to the Face show. And I see some people in the chat speculating about what happened. Johnny left voluntarily from WIP. You can Google it. He talked about it on the air. The time slot that he was working for WIP from 2 to 6. It's not just 2 to 6 that he's on the air. He had to be there before to get ready. He wouldn't get home till after 7. He's got young kids. He wanted to be able to spend time with his family. Give John a lot of credit. He walked away from a really successful show. He built that show, him and Ike. It was a great show. But Johnny voluntarily walked away. So we just had John on. Hopefully he'll be coming on more. Always great talking to John about the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm sure you'll be hearing some things about what John's going to do next in the upcoming months, as he said. So let's take a quick look. I want to look forward to this matchup against the Tampa Bay Bucs. But before we do, the Pro Football Focus grades have come out after that Philadelphia Eagles New York Giants game. And surprise, surprise, not a lot of good grades for this Philadelphia Eagles team. But some things that jumped out at me. You look at the two lowest graded players on the defensive side of the football for the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Morrow and Zach Cunningham. So when we pound our fist on the table about how bad this linebacker position is and how much we blame Howie Roseman for ignoring a key position, well, look at that. The two lowest graded players on your Eagles defense were your starting linebackers. Shaq Leonard actually didn't get graded that low. He didn't play a lot. Only played 29 snaps. Morrow played 62 in that football game. Now, the one thing that I'm sure will make a lot of people happy is what Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks did in this football game. Because you look at Keely Ringo, he was targeted only once, didn't give up a catch. Eli Ricks was targeted twice, didn't give up a catch. So our young corners continue to not play badly. There's some promise with those guys, but they're young. They're rookies. You're going to have some ups and downs. You can't expect rookies to carry you to a Super Bowl. You need young players on your defense. You need guys contributing on their rookie deal, as I talked to Johnny Marks about, but not rookies. You need second, third, fourth-year players who are contributing to your team while they're still on that cheap rookie contract, and you don't have it right now. You look all over that defense, with the exception of Reed Blankenship, who was an undrafted rookie last year. You don't have second, third, and fourth-year players contributing to this team. You have Milton Williams and Jordan Davis at D-tackle. And there's a lot of people, including myself, who are really starting to question the Jordan Davis draft pick. You took him 13th overall. He should be a game changer. And I just don't think he has it in him. But outside of D-tackle, you look at your edge rushers. You're getting nothing from anybody outside of Hassan Reddick. Josh Sweat has hit a wall. He's playing way too many snaps this season because you have nobody behind him. You look at linebacker. Nobody you drafted is contributing. You had to bring in guys nobody else wanted. Shaq Leonard was cut by the Indianapolis Colts. Zach Cunningham was still available in training camp. Nick Morrow, the Chicago Bears, had an opportunity to sign TJ Edwards, and they jumped at it. and said, sure, take Nick Morrow. He started for us last year, take him. You look at safety. Next to Reed Blankenship, Howie Roseman made the decision to come into this season next to Reed Blankenship with Terrell Edmonds, who Mike Tomlin said, he started for us for 5 years? Yeah, sure. Take him on a 1-year deal. He's not playing for the Steelers defense anymore. You think he would have let him out the door if Terrell Edmonds could still play? The other guy they put back there, Justin Evans, out of Texas A&M in 2018, hasn't been able to stay healthy his entire career. What happened this year? He's on IR. And we talked about Terrell Edmonds. They had to trade him to Tennessee because they had to get desperate again and try to make a trade for Kevin Byard. And not that Byard is playing horribly, but he's not the all-pro he was a couple years ago. And looking at these Pro Football Focus numbers, Kevin Byard was targeted 4 times in that game. He gave up 4 catches for 42 yards. James Bradbury targeted 4 times. He gave up 3 catches for 44 yards. Avonte Maddox targeted 2 times, 2 catches for 38 yards. Blankenship targeted twice, only gave up 1 catch for 3 yards. These guys didn't play a lot of snaps in that football game. But this defense is in the state that it's in because of Howie Roseman and his inability to draft. Maybe they got lucky this year. Maybe Jalen Carter and Sidney Brown, let's hope he gets a speedy recovery, and Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks. Maybe these guys are going to grow into be players that can contribute to this defense. But the reason the defense looks the way it looks right now isn't because of Sean Desai. It isn't because of Matt Patricia. It's because the personnel simply isn't good enough. And the crazy thing is, as bad as this personnel is, when the move was made from Matt Patricia, to Matt Patricia, from Sean Desai, a lot of people said, well, it can't get much worse. Unfortunately, guys, it has gotten worse under Matt Patricia. They never should have made that move. It was a desperate move. It was too late in the season, and you're seeing now the issues because of it. Yeah, they struggled against really good offenses. You look at the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys, the last 2 games that Sean Desai was your DC, you're talking about 2 top 5 offenses. Eagles got dominated. I'm not making any excuses. Sean Desai didn't do a great job. But you're talking about 2 top 5 offenses in the NFL. When they switched over to Matt Patricia, I actually tweeted out, make sure you're following me on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, at Bill Colarulo. I tweeted out, before Eagles fans get too excited over the next 4 games about Matt Patricia being the next Jim Johnson, look at who their opponents are. Because the Seahawks are the 21st ranked offense. The Giants were the 29th ranked offense. The Cardinals are the 19th ranked offense in terms of yards. So I thought you were going to see Matt Patricia come in and this defense actually start playing better. And it's gotten worse against teams that it shouldn't have gotten worse against offenses that aren't very good. And the crazy thing is you hear Nick Sirianni today, and this is the most frustrating part of all of this. He was asked if they were considering making a change going into the playoffs to their offensive or defensive play caller. And when he was specifically asked about the defense, he said that they're still running Sean Desai's defense, but Matt Patricia is just the one calling the plays. No wonder there's communication issues. No wonder you can't stop anybody. You have Matt Patricia running somebody else's defense? What the hell is going on with this football team? Who in their right mind would think it is a good idea for a team with Super Bowl aspirations to change defensive coordinators with only 4 games left in the season and have a new defensive coordinator run another defensive coordinator's defense? Are you kidding me? With what we're watching with this Philadelphia Eagles team, it's amazing how quickly things have fallen. It really is. And it depresses the hell out of me. Because just like you, I wait all year for NFL playoffs. I can't wait for the NFL playoffs. And this is the feeling we all have right now. And you look at that defense, and don't get me wrong, we're talking about Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. The defense has stunk pretty much all year. But at least under Matt Patricia, under Sean Desai, you had a few games where they played well, or a few halves, I should say, because it was rare that they played start to finish well. But they did play well in the first game against the Bucs. They did play well against the Miami Dolphins. They did have a really good second half against the Los Angeles Rams. They had a good second half against the Dallas Cowboys at Lincoln Financial Field. So at least there were times where the defense looked like it could compete. But under Matt Patricia, you got none of that right now. And how much is that Matt Patricia's fault if he's running somebody else's defense? And I'm not a Matt Patricia fan. Don't get me wrong. I didn't like when they brought him in. I didn't like what he could potentially have done to this culture, knowing what we knew about him in Detroit. But you expect this guy to run somebody else's defense, and then we wonder why the defense looks the way it does? Why there's communication issues? Why guys can't get off the field? This is a very well-run organization usually. It does not look like a well-run organization right now. But like I said, guys, even under Sean Desai, things weren't great. The defense has struggled all year. And let's just look at the numbers and compare them to last year's defense for a second. Last year's defense was the number 2 defense in the NFL in terms of yards against. They gave up only 300 yards a game. This year, that jumped to 356. It's 26th in the league. They were a top 7 defense last year in terms of points against. They gave up a little over 20 points a game. This year, they're giving up 25 points a game, which is 30th in the NFL. A 5-point jump in the NFL is massive. They were the number 1 defense against the pass. They were giving up a little under 180 yards a game. 180 yards a game. I know everybody hated Jonathan Gannon. This defense gave up 180 passing yards a game last year. That was number 1 in the league. This year, 253, number 31 in the NFL. They've dropped from number 1 to number 31. You look at the rushing game. Well, last year they were 16th in the league, giving up 122 yards per game. That was last year. This year, they're still top 10 at 103. But that's all because of what they did the first 9 games. You look at the last 8 games now. They've given up over 100 yards to every single opponent that they've faced. After holding every opponent the first 9 games, except for one, an overtime game against the Washington Commanders, they held every opponent under 100, an average of 66 rushing yards against per game. That number has skyrocketed to 130, 140. They've let every single team in the last 8 games rush for over 100 yards. You look at third down last year, they were 14th in the league at 38%. They are 31st in the NFL at 46%. They were number 12 in the red zone last year. They're number 30 in the red zone this year. And a major difference. They were number 1 in the league last year with 70 sacks. They have 43 sacks this year. They dropped 26 sacks. They had 27 takeaways last year. Top 5 in the league, 27 takeaways. This year, 18. Dropped to 23rd in the league. This defense has been bad all season long. And they tried changing defensive coordinators. But if you follow me or you've been following this show tonight, you know my issue is not with the coaches on that side of the football. It's with the personnel. And as great as Howie Roseman can be, he really dropped the ball on this defense this year. Really dropped the ball. But that's where it ends for me with Howie Roseman. Because if you jump over to the offensive side of the football, you heard me say it to Johnny Marks earlier, I will take this roster on offense and put it up against any roster in the NFL on paper. Howie Roseman didn't make a mistake building the personnel on the offensive side of the ball. The mistake there is with your head coach and your offensive coordinator. And we could look at the final numbers like we just did. You saw all the numbers from the defense drop significantly from last year. The numbers on offense really haven't dropped that much. They've dropped a little. You were number 3 in the NFL last year. You're number 8 this year. You had 28 points last year. You got 25 this year. Passing yards dropped a little bit. Rushing yards dropped a little bit. But you're still top 10 in almost every single category. But there's one major difference between last year's offense and this year's offense. You were top 5 in turnovers last year. You only turned the ball over 19 times in 17 games. They're now 23rd in the NFL with 28 turnovers. And I've said before, even though all these other numbers aren't that much different than last year's offensive numbers, it doesn't pass the eye test. You watch this Philadelphia Eagles offense, and something is off. They are not clicking. There does not seem to be any rhythm to the offense. There hasn't felt like there's been any rhythm for weeks to that offense. And I don't have a lot of confidence that this Philadelphia Eagles team is suddenly now going to be able to flip the switch because it's the playoffs. Nick Sirianni's message to his team in the locker room yesterday was, we're 0-0 now. It's a brand new season. It's time for us to respond. He even resorted to using Rocky Balboa quotes, talking about in life when you get hit, it's about getting up. It's all words, man. It's all lip service. You heard Jalen Hurts after the game, too, talking about, we got to see how we respond. How we're going to respond to the adversity. I'm so over the words. I'm so over the lip service because guess what? I said it yesterday on the postgame show. This team didn't respond after getting dominated by the 49ers. This team didn't respond after getting dominated by the Dallas Cowboys. This team didn't respond after giving up a 92-yard drive to a backup quarterback in Seattle with under 2 minutes left. This team didn't respond after getting embarrassed by Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals in your own building. What makes us believe that all of the sudden now this team is going to respond because the playoffs are here? This is who this team is. And the sad reality, they've been this team all season long. We go back all the way to week 1 with the benefit of hindsight being 2020, and this team hasn't been a good team all year. They've struggled on defense all season. The offense has looked off all season. But somehow, and it really is a miracle, that this team was able to win 11 football games. Incredible. There were a lot of people saying this was the worst 10-1 team in the history of Philadelphia and the NFL. And it's hard to disagree with that statement now. It really is. And guys, I don't want to be negative. I said this before. I want to see this team do well. I want to see this team go to a Super Bowl. I wish I could be positive about this team. But how can you be positive about this football team after what we have seen the last 6 games? You look at this Eagles team over the last 6. They're 1-5. They're averaging 20 points on offense. They're giving up 30 points on defense in the last 6 games. Not against great offenses. Yeah, the Niners and the Cowboys are mixed in there, but you're talking about the Seahawks, the Giants twice, the Arizona Cardinals. You've got to be kidding me. Giving up 30 points a game in the last 6. You look at turnovers. Philadelphia Eagles in the last 6 games have turned the ball over 12 times. And they've only taken it away 4. A -8 turnover differential for the Philadelphia Eagles in the last 6 games. A -59 point differential in the last 6 games. So how are we supposed to feel good about this football team heading into the playoffs? And how are we supposed to hear the words from Sirianni and Hurts that now it's about how we respond when you haven't responded in weeks? This is just who they are. And the thing that bothers me the most is I was one of the biggest Nick Sirianni fans out there. I used to tout him for the culture that I thought he built with this Eagles organization. But now that you see what this Eagles team is doing when faced with a little adversity, and they are cowering. The moment they got punched in the mouth by the San Francisco 49ers, it was over. They stopped believing in themselves. They stopped believing in their coaching staff. They stopped believing in everything. And I see a team that has completely checked out. But there's a game this weekend. We got to wait till Monday night for this Philadelphia Eagles Tampa Bay Bucks game. Let's take a look at the matchup. Let's look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I see some people in the chat saying that I froze. Am I still frozen or am I good? Let me know in the chat if I'm still frozen because I'm going to keep going. But you take a look at this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. They're not a great team. They're not a great team at all. 9-8. And I had asked the people last week on my Instagram, and some people thought this was me whining or complaining, and it wasn't. I was simply asking the question of should a division winner automatically host the wild card game? And this isn't a complaint. They're not going to change it this year. It was just a question that comes up year after year because the Philadelphia Eagles, as bad as they are 11-5. Excuse me, 11-6 now. And the Tampa Bay Bucks are 9-8. So should the Tampa Bay Bucks host that game simply because they won the division? I know that's the way things are in the NFL. But I'm not sure how I feel about that. It doesn't matter for this year. I'm not talking about this year. I'm not making excuses. This Eagles team sucks, okay? I'm not making an excuse. It was just a question I raised about how they work it. But I'm not sure that I completely agree. I think division winners should make the playoffs automatically. I think you should be rewarded for winning your division. But I think if a team has more wins than you, that they should maybe reseed in the playoffs. But that's just me. But you look at this Tampa Bay Bucks team, they are not a good football team by any means. They're 23rd in the NFL in total yards per game on offense. They're 23rd in the NFL in yards against on defense. They're 20th in the NFL in points on offense. Now, the one thing they have done well, they haven't given up a lot of points on defense. 6th in the NFL in points against. Now, part of this you got to take with a grain of salt because look at the teams this Bucs team has played. They play in the NFC South, a brutal, brutal division. The Falcons stink. The Saints stink. The Carolina Panthers are I think they are the worst team in the NFL. Definitely the worst run organization in the NFL. But you look at this Tampa Bay Bucs team, they're not good. 17th in passing offense, 32nd in rushing offense, the worst rushing offense in the NFL. And this Eagles defense that was so good at stopping the run the first 9 games has been brutal against the run the last 8. If they can't stop the run on Monday night against the worst rushing offense in the entire league, I'm going to lose my freaking mind. There is no reason that this Bucs team should be able to run the football against the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday night. Force Baker Mayfield to beat you. But what this team has done well is they've won in their turnover department. Philadelphia Eagles are a -10 turnover differential. The Bucs are a +8. Only 18 turnovers on offense. They protect the football. Baker Mayfield has been playing conservatively this year. And on defense, they can take it away. 26 turnovers they've created on defense. And we talked about it. Todd Bowles loves to blitz. Loves to blitz. Number 3 in the league in terms of blitzing. But it's what they've done over the last 6 games that has me concerned. And we're going to take one more quick break tonight. And when we get back, we'll wrap up the show. I'll finish my evaluation of the Bucs and the Eagles, and then I'll give you a little Philadelphia Eagles trivia. Now, don't Google it. Don't Google it. But with all this talk about Nick Sirianni not coming back as head coach next year, the Philadelphia Eagles trivia is tied to some head coaching decisions with the Philadelphia Eagles. So stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday. Watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back in to the Legal Hands to the Face show with Bill Colarulo. I know everybody's getting ready for the national championship game tonight. Should be a good one. I'm taking Michigan, though. I know Washington's offense is so damn good, but Michigan's defense, I think, is going to be able to stop that offense. We'll see if I'm right. Those listening to the audio of this, you're already going to know the outcome of the game, so hopefully I'll be correct. Before we talk more about this Philadelphia Eagles, Tampa Bay Bucks matchup, let's look around at some of these other games because there's some good ones. It's a shame the Philadelphia Eagles got to wait till Monday. But I guess the good news there is we can enjoy the rest of these playoff games without being upset if the Eagles lose. But you look at these other games. Starts on Saturday at 4:30. You got the Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans. Two great stories right there. Cleveland Browns, local guy Joe Flacco from Audubon, New Jersey. Unbelievable what he's doing for the Cleveland Browns. They have a great defense. And the defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, you may recognize the name, Jim Schwartz, who helped the Philadelphia Eagles win a Super Bowl, has one of the best defenses in the NFL in Cleveland. Cleveland is 3-point favorites in Houston, the AFC South winners. And another great story in Houston, C.J. Stroud, an absolute stud rookie quarterback. DeMeco Ryans, rookie head coach, doing a great job. Really, two teams that I don't mind rooting for, the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans, because of the stories on those teams. But Houston wins the AFC South because our old buddy Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars blow it in Week 18. Losing to the Tennessee Titans, who had nothing to play for. Crazy. And then at 8:15, the Miami Dolphins have to go on the road to Kansas City to play Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 3.5-point favorites in that game. And you talk about a collapse. The Eagles' collapse has been worse, no doubt. But these Dolphins have fallen hard. They went from Super Bowl favorites. They're now on the road wild card weekend in Kansas City. That's going to be a good game. Kansas City, 3.5-point favorite. It's going to be bad weather in Kansas City from what I'm seeing. Not sure that Dolphins team is going to be able to play in bad weather in Kansas City the way they're going to want to play. So I didn't give you a prediction on the first game. I'm going Cleveland. I just think that defense is too good. I think they'll beat Houston. I'm taking Kansas City on the Saturday night game. I think they'll beat the Miami Dolphins. And then we wake up on Sunday. We got a nice 1 o'clock game. The Pittsburgh Steelers in Buffalo, who win the AFC East against the Miami Dolphins, the last game of the year last night. That was a good game. Josh Allen is a turnover machine, man. We were talking about the turnovers for the Eagles. If Josh Allen could just clean up his turnovers, they would dominate every damn week. But the Bills are 10-point favorites over the Steelers. I wouldn't bet the game. I don't like the line. I don't like giving that many points in a playoff game. But I got the Buffalo Bills winning that game, but I would stay away from it. The Chiefs, I think, cover the 3.5. The Cleveland Browns, I think, cover the 3. But I would not take the Bills to cover the 10. Not saying to take the Steelers either. I just don't like the line, but I think the Bills win that game. Then Sunday night, this game will get a lot of people excited. The Green Bay Packers are in Dallas. Packers are playing good football. Jordan Love playing really well at quarterback. But I just think that Dallas Cowboys team is too damn good at home, putting up historic numbers at home with that offense. So, hate to say it, but I see the boys winning against the Green Bay Packers on Sunday at 4:30. And then Sunday night, you got Matt Stafford and the LA Rams going to Detroit, Stafford's old team. And then you got Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions going up against the Rams, Goff's old team. Some good storylines there. The Detroit Lions are 3.5-point favorites, but this is my upset of the week right here. I got the LA Rams beating the Detroit Lions in the first playoff game at Ford Field. The LA Rams are playing really good football right now. Really good football. You can't count what they just did. They won, but with backups. The 49ers had backups. Carson Wentz played in that game. But you look at the 6 games before that, they won 5 out of 6. Only game they lost was an overtime game to the Baltimore Ravens. I got the LA Rams winning that game. And then we got to wait till Monday night for the Philadelphia Eagles, Tampa Bay Bucks. And I talked to you guys about how bad the Eagles have been over the last 6, 1-5, with a -8 turnover differential and a -59 point differential. You look at the Tampa Bay Bucks, as bad as they are, they're playing well. 5-1 in their last 6. +5 turnover differential. +38 point differential. Should the Philadelphia Eagles win this game? On paper, they should dominate this game. You look at what they did in week 3. They won that game 25-11. It was one of their best wins of the year. They put up 472 yards of offense. They ran the ball for 201. And they held the Tampa Bay Bucks to only 174 yards, 41 yards on the ground, 133 in the air. The Philadelphia Eagles should be able to dominate this football game. If week 3 was any indicator, if these rosters were any indicator, it should be a blowout. The problem is, how do you have any faith in this Philadelphia Eagles team after what we've seen the last 6 weeks? I have no idea if this Eagles team is going to come out and roll over like they did on Sunday against the New York Giants. So the Eagles should win this game. They should dominate it the way they did in week 3. They have a better roster up and down than the Tampa Bay Bucks. But whether or not they will tell us a lot about if this team has truly given up on its season and its coaching staff. The sad thing is, guys, they're 3-point favorites now. Line keeps going up. And that tells me that Vegas thinks they're going to win. To me, that is an Eagles line. And that means the Vegas odds makers really think that they're going to win this football game. And call me crazy. You've heard me rant now for 90 minutes about this Eagles team. I think they are going to win on Monday night. I really do. I have no reason to believe that this team has any heart left, but I think they're going to torture us for one more freaking week. They're going to beat the Bucs. They're going to get us all excited. The Rams are going to upset the Detroit Lions, which means the Rams are going to San Francisco. And guess what, boys? We're coming. Because it's going to set up for the Philadelphia Eagles to be in Dallas for the divisional round. That's going to be the torture for us, guys. They're going to beat the Bucs, and we're going to get tortured when they get dominated in the divisional round against the Dallas Cowboys. But, guys, like we end every Legal Hands to the Face show with a little Philadelphia Eagles trivia. So there's a lot of talk about Nick Sirianni and will he be back next year as head coach. So it had me thinking, what is the shortest tenure of any Eagles coach in franchise history. And I removed the interim coaches because Pat Shurmur coached one game as an interim coach after they fired Chip Kelly. But what coach had the shortest tenure in Philadelphia Eagles franchise history? And I see people saying Marion Campbell, not correct. It's kind of a sad answer. The name is, because no one's going to get this, Bo McMillan in 1951 coached 2 games. Philadelphia Eagles were 2-0. Unfortunately, he had some stomach issues, had to get surgery. They thought he was having some ulcer troubles. Turned out to be stomach cancer. Ended his coaching career after only 2 games, won both of them. 2-0 as an Eagles coach, but Bo McMillan was the shortest tenured coach in Philadelphia Eagles franchise history, going all the way back to 1951. Had coached the Detroit Lions for 2 years before that and was trying to replace Greasy Neal, the famous Greasy Neal. Started out doing a good job, but unfortunately, that's why cherish your health, guys. Cherish your health. But that's it for the Legal Hands of the Face show. If you're tuning in late and you missed the interview with Johnny Marks, you can check it out on YouTube. This will be available. If you want to listen to the audio, we'll be up on all your favorite podcast platforms. And if you're following along on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, make sure you're liking and following. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me everywhere for Eagles content all day long. Appreciate you guys. Hit that like button on the way out. And as always, go Birds.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.